Good morning, everybody. I wanted to come on and talk about Unit 5. I hope you have enjoyed your spring break and have kind of rested and geared up to face the second half of the course. We have been going 8 weeks. We have 8 more weeks. And this coming week, we'll start probably the most important unit, and that is the one that introduces the research paper. Now, your research paper is not due until April 14th, which is during Unit 6. So please do not ask me, where do I turn in my research paper this week or next week? For the next 2 weeks, we are only discussing the instructions, beginning to look at MLA, and we're excited. And so the first 2 weeks of this particular big unit of the research paper is just instructions, picking your poem and learning how to write the paper. And so you are not going to be submitting it until it is due April 14th, which is during Unit 6. I have noticed that quite a few of you do not seem to be opening up all of the instructions for each of the assignments. This paper that you're going to be starting is worth 25% of your overall average, if you remember from the syllabus. So very, very important that you open up all of the instructions, the handouts, the things that I post over the next few weeks so that you are aware of the strict format of the paper, 7 paragraphs, the thesis statement. And so maybe you didn't do so well on the short story analysis. Turn that around and do well on this research paper. Some of you have asked about extra credit, and I've been giving it, various times during the semester. I think one of the kind of the preconceptions that is false is that college teachers let you make up things. And as you know, that I don't do that. However, if you are not happy with your grade, realize that this research paper, again, 25% of your overall average can really boost your average and help you with that, attaining that particular grade that you want. In addition, though, 25% of your average can also, negatively affect your grade if you don't do well on it. So please watch this video in its entirety, open up all of the handouts and the things that I post, and I think that you will do just good on, or just great on this research paper. All right. Again, not due until April 14th. If you'll look, this second thing that I have listed are the poetry research paper guidelines. If you will open up this particular handout that I've given you, you will see that it is as kind of as step by step as I can give you, showing you what goes in each paragraph, showing you the formula for the thesis statement again. And so I think if you will, again, I would print this instruction sheet and follow along with it as closely as you can. And that will help you by making sure you don't get points off for just the overall format of your essay being incorrect. This is a research paper, so you're going to have to document your sources, where you got them. And this week and next week, we'll be covering parenthetical documentation, the works cited page, embedding quotes, using snippets of quotes. And I think that will help you. Your paper will flow even though you're getting sources from outside. No paper mills, no student essays, no personal websites, no websites with advertisements, no bulletin boards or discussion groups, no wikis. And I really need to add no schmoop. That's the SCHMOOP, because there's no scholarly evidence that it is a ethical paper. You're going to be formatting this paper very similar than you did the short story analysis, looking at the literary devices, and those become your body paragraphs. However, you have 2 extra body paragraphs in this paper. Your short story analysis was 5 paragraphs. This one is 7 paragraphs. And if you'll look at the second page, you'll see that paragraph 1, you're basically giving a literal summary of the poem, just like you did in the short story analysis. And then number 2, very important, you've got that formula for your thesis statement. Paragraph 2, you're going to give a brief biography of your author. So, while there may be a whole book written on Emily Dickinson, if you choose her, you're going to have to narrow it down to 1 paragraph. So you're going to have to kind of condense her life into 1 paragraph. Paragraph 3, you're going to give an overall physical structure definition or description of your poem. How is it organized in stanzas? How many stanzas does it have? How many lines does it have? Does it have a meter or a rhythm? Does it have a rhyme scheme? What are the punctuation marks that are given in this particular poem? Is there specific capitalization things? So physically, how the poem looks, that's what paragraph 3 should be about. Paragraphs 4, 5, and 6, which are 3-body paragraphs, are going to go back to your thesis statement where you listed those 1, 2, and 3 literary devices. Now, you can group these. So let's say there's a lot of figures of speech in your poem. Then that's fine. Say figures of speech. Don't just say similes, because maybe there's only 2 similes, but maybe there's a lot of similes, metaphors, and some alliteration. Then you could group that into figures of speech as being one literary device. Tone, diction, specific allusions, things that we have talked about in the course, that's what you need to list in the literary devices. Then those becomes paragraph 4, 5, and 6. Remember, paragraphs 1 through 6 should stay in present tense, except paragraph 2, because when you give brief biography of your author, of course, every author that I have chosen has passed away, so you can talk about them in the past tense. But paragraphs 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 need to be in present tense because the poem is, quote, still alive. It also needs to be in third person point of view. You should not say the word I, and you should not say the word you, unless you're quoting the poem, because third person means you're away from the poem. You're analyzing it from an unbiased perspective. Paragraph 7, however, you are allowed to use first person because I'm wanting this to be a personal evaluation. What did the poem make you feel? What did it make you think about? What experiences have you drawn upon that you can relate to in the poem? If none of that helped, then put right in there that, I really couldn't couldn't comprehend necessarily on a personal level what the poem is about because you've never experienced that. That's fine. Or if there were some things that critics said that you didn't agree with or that you did agree with, you can put that in paragraph 7. All right, so that is very important that you print that. Those are the instructions over the structure of the particular research paper. Then the rest of the week is talking about MLA, finding sources, looking at the new updates, because maybe you wrote a paper in the last 2 years, but MLA did a 9th edition and the 8th edition was the big changes. 9th edition, not so many more changes. And then there's some works cited practice. Choosing your author and your poem, you need to submit that by March 21st. The third thing listed are the authors and the poems. I'm going to briefly go through these to kind of maybe give you a little bit of background on each of these poems to maybe help you out with which poem or which author you want to choose. Sylvia Plath, an American poet who really dealt with a lot of depression. She did end up committing suicide. A lot of her poems deal with her struggles of being a new mother, struggles of a relationship with her father, and then just the struggles of depression and her suicide attempts. William Blake, a British poet who, if you remember, we read The Lamb and we looked at the scansion of The Lamb. A lot of his poems are spiritual message. So if you like that didactic poet, which means that there's some sort of spiritual lesson within his poetry, you might want to choose William Blake. The Lamb was in Songs of Innocence, which was a collection. The Tiger is kind of the mate to that one, which is in the Songs of Experience. The Lamb was about Jesus. The Tiger is about the devil. Alfred Lord Tennyson, of course, a famous author. If you remember, if you've seen the movie The Blind Side about Michael Orr, you remember that Tim McGraw's character who plays his adopted dad helps him with his senior his senior project, and The Charge of the Light Brigade is one of those poems. Tennyson was known to write a lot about things in history that were going on, but even so, even mythological things or legends like the Lady of Shalott. Then we have Robert Frost, who was an American author, probably the most famous American poet ever. And he wrote a lot about New England, road, if you've written or if you've read The Road Not Taken, you've probably heard it at some graduation ceremonies. Two roads diverge in a wood. So you've probably heard that one. Now, let me give you a word of advice. When you are searching these particular poems in the databases, and I'll share this a little bit later on, but don't put the word not, because if you type in The Road Not Taken, it's going to give you results with the road, but not with taken. And so not is kind of a search phrase, and I'm sure some of you know this. So if you search anything that has not or no in it, just say The Road Taken, and that way you'll get the poem. Langston Hughes, famous African-American writer, wrote a lot about slavery. Even though he didn't really experience slavery, he did experience the prejudices of living in a time when everything was segregated. But he also wrote a lot about New Orleans and the Jazz Age, and so he's an interesting poet. William Wordsworth, of course, a British poet. We read I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. He has a few other poems that I thought would be interesting to write a research paper over. A lot of them have to do with the landscape of London and England. Emily Dickinson, one of the most famous American poets. We might have heard that she was crazy or a recluse, which probably is a little bit truthful. A lot of her poems are about death. They are kind of odd or different, but a lot of people have written about her poetry, so that makes doing a research paper easy. Gwendolyn Brooks, one of my favorite authors, African-American writer who wrote a lot about just the struggles of not only being a Black person, but also being a woman. And so, and then she just wrote a lot of interesting poems about things that she saw. For example, Real Cool. It's a very short poem, but it's about some guys that she sees that are skipping school and they're playing pool. And so just a kind of a fun author, and I really enjoy reading her poetry. And then Maya Angelou, if you are familiar with Oprah Winfrey, you know that Maya Angelou is Oprah Winfrey's godmother. Famous oralist, spoke a lot at different inaugural things like president inaugurations or just very dignified events. Wrote a lot of poetry about females, about strong females. Also wrote about different holidays. For example, Amazing Peace is about Christmas. So I think I've given you a good variety of choices to choose from when choosing your poet, but I also want you to tell me which poem you have chosen as well. All right. I think that is all I wanted to cover on this first unit dealing with the research paper. Just please make sure you are following the checklist, opening it up, looking through, and kind of just checking off things as you complete them. Feel free to send me an email, ltruman@kilgore.edu, or send me a remind message. Again, if you send me a message on Blackboard, I don't always check those. It's only when I log in and see that I have a message. I'm not notified. If you send me a remind message, which some of you still did not join remind, and I honestly don't understand that because it's a way for me to remind you of things and for you to quickly kind of text me if you would in the app. But that information is in the Start Here tab.